Hello there, this is Alana Tucky, and I received a question about this problem, which is 3.3, number 13 from the study plan. And we have to do all sorts of stuff here. We're going to have a bunch of different ages for male and female populations under 80 years old. And we have males here and females here, and we're going to have to find the mean and the standard deviation for each groups. So I'm going to pull up a sample problem that's very similar to this. And we are not going to do this stuff by hand unless forced to, right? We don't have to be able to do this by hand. So let's see how to do it. So you can see here you've got your ages, your males, your females. I can click on this and copy the table to the clipboard or open in StatCrunch. Me personally, I like copying. Even if I want it in StatCrunch, I still copy to the clipboard. I just prefer it. And then I'm going to paste it in here. Okay, and I did that with Control V. All right, now you might notice this guy right here. Give me all sorts of grief. What the heck's going on there? Well, the trouble is that Excel thinks it's smarter than you are all the time, which drives us crazy. So you want to click on that cell. You want to format the cell. And you got to wait a minute for it to come up. There it is. And you want to choose text. It basically thinks that 10/19 is October 19th. It thinks it's a date, but it's not. It's, of course, 10 to 19 ages, but Excel doesn't know that. Okay, so now let me insert a new column. So I'm going to click up here on the B. I'm going to right click and insert. And what I'm doing here is stuff you would do by paper and pencil by hand, even if you didn't have Excel. I'm just using Excel to be my typewriter, essentially. All right, now what you need here is the midpoints. Now the midpoint is the middle of that first class. Now be careful, because a lot of students think, oh, I'll add 0 and 9 and divide by 2. No, 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 no. Because it's not really 0 to 9. It's 0 to 9.999999999 forever, right? And then the next class starts at 10. So if you're 9.5 years old, you're in that first group. If you're 9 and 11 months, if you're 1 day shy of your 10th birthday, you still count into this first group. So we say 0 to 9 to be convenient, but what it really is 0 to 9.999999999 forever. Okay, well, if that's the case, then what's the middle of that class? Well, what you do is you add up consecutive lower class limits. So the first lower class limit is 0 plus, and then I'm going to add the next lower class limit of 10, close my parentheses, and divide by 2. And that's my first lower class limit, or my first midpoint, excuse me. So halfway between 0 and 9.999 forever is 5. And then I'm going to do it again. Equals parentheses 10 plus, now the next lower class limit is 20, because it's not really 19, it's really 19.999 forever. So you add up 10 and 20 and you divide by 2. At least you should. Oh, it thinks it's text. Hold on. Right click, format cell, number. I'm going to have to retype it all. Equals parentheses 10 plus 20 divided by 2. There we go. Oh, now it wants. Oh, Excel, you are so crazy. All right, so I right-clicked, in case you're wondering what I did. I formatted cells. When I picked number, it thought I wanted 2 decimal places by default, which I don't really want any decimal places, so I just lowered that with this little clicking right here to 0. And again, you don't have to do this with Excel. You can use a computer. You can use, which I'm doing right here, or you could use paper and pencil. You could use a calculator. You could use whatever. Now, what am I doing here? Well, I'm noticing that 0 and 10 are 10 apart. 10 and 20 are 10 apart. 20 and 30 are 10 apart. Look at the upper class limits, 9, 19, 29, 39. They're 10 apart. That's because your class width is 10, right? You can kind of see it when you're doing the problem. Well, once I know the first midpoint is 5, and I see that all the classes are equally distant, 10 apart, 10 apart, 10 apart, see 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, then that means I know the midpoints are also 10 apart. So I go 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, and so on. That only works, of course, if the ages or the classes, whatever this is over here, are all equal, which they are in this case. So it's fine. Okay? And if they're not equal, then you're stuck doing this. Equals 20 plus 30. Add together and divide by 2, and so on. So if you want, you can keep doing that formula all the way along, right? So equals 30 plus parentheses 30 plus 40. Add them up and divide by 2, and there's your next group. One way or another, you have to figure out these midpoints in order to be able to solve this problem. Okay. So, and you're going to need those whether you're going to use a calculator or whether you're going to use it by hand. You're going to need those problems. All right, so now that I've got the midpoints and the males and the midpoints and the females, I need to find, let's see here, how do I want to do this? I'll do the sum here. So I'm going to find the sum down here. I'm going to show you in Excel right now, and then I'm going to go back and show you in a calculator. I got to make this a little bit smaller. Okay, so there's the sum. I'm going to label this out for us, so that way we have it. I'm going to give it a little highlight so it's easy for you guys to follow. All right, so there are the sums of those particular columns. All right, now I need a new column. I need to know what males times the midpoints is. Because if you recall, that's how the formula works. Let me go back to the formula. Not that we use the formula that often, but what you do is you want x1, which is your midpoint, times f1, which is your frequency, so your first male frequency. Then you want x2, your midpoint, times f2, your next frequency, and so on. Now you can do this the long way, which is how I've shown it in previous problems, which is where you find males times midpoints in one column, like that. But there's an easier way because there's another problem, another way to do it. Let me put it that way. I'm going to make this smaller so you can see. So you could find males times midpoints. You could do 5 times 11 and drag it down and all that good stuff. Cool. Then you could find the sum of that column that you just found. I don't know why I put an extra column in here. I really don't need it. All right, there's the sum right there. Beautiful. And then to find the mean, you just take equals 5700 divided by the sum for the males, which is 130, and you get 43.84. The other way to find it, so I should say male mean. Male mean. There we go. The other way to find it is using a feature called sum product. Sum product. It's a function. It's going to say array number 1 and array number 2. So you say, okay, here is array number 1. So I use my mouse and I'm highlighting all the midpoints, not the labels, but the midpoints. You could also just type B2 colon B9 in this particular case, comma, C2 colon C9. There you go. And that gets you the 5700 without having to do all the rigmarole. Sorry, that's the male. It's an intermediate calculation. And then the male mean is equal to that number divided by the sum there. So it's a way to get out of having to do this whole giant column thing if you don't want to do the giant column thing. So you could just label it. This is the sum product, which is basically just what it says it is. It's the sum, let me put it back. It's the sum of the product. So if you multiply, i.e. product, here, hold on. If you multiply these two numbers to get this number, and these two numbers to get this number, and these two numbers to get this number, and so on. You multiply all those products, and then you add them all up, you'll get the sum product. And by using sum product, I don't need this column anymore. Nice, huh? I mean, makes life easier, right? So this is the male sum product, I should say. Because you know what's coming, right? We're going to have to find the female. All right, well, it's not going to be that big of a deal. I'm going to copy and paste and just change the word here to female. Okay, so the female sum product equals sum product, parentheses. Then you say the midpoint array, B2 colon B9, comma, the female product, female array right there. So there's the sum product if you bothered with a column for them. And then you have to take that cell, 5340, and you divide it by the sum for the females, which is 120, and there's your mean right there. So you've got mean for the females. Oh, let's be sexist about this. Mean for the females is pink. Mean for the males is blue. There we go. I'm giving them gender roles. Done. All right, so there's your means. Let's see if I agree with that. And they're showing all this by hand stuff. See, they've got the 130, and then they've got the 5700. All that jazz. Oops. Oh, and then they're going to find the deviations. Hold on one sec. There we go. All right, so 43.85. Is that what we got? Yep, 43.85. Look at that. And then they're going to go find the standard deviation, which I'm going to find in a second. Hold on. Okay, so to find the deviations, that is complicated. We have to find the value minus the mean. Let me write it out, one sec. All right, there it is. So the formula for sigma, here, hold on, well actually sigma squared, the variance, is that you have to take x value minus the mean, you square it, and you multiply it by the frequency. And then you're going to add it all up and divide by the total frequencies. And then when you're all done, you'll take the square root. I know it's complicated. That's just the way standard deviation is. And again, this is much easier in a calculator. I'll show you a calculator in a minute. So you take your midpoint, which is 5, in my case cell B2, minus, and I'm going to work on the men right now. So minus the male mean, which is in cell D10. I'm going to give it dollar signs by pressing F4. So that means that the mean will stay constant through this whole calculation. Then I'm going to close my parentheses. I'm going to square it. I'm going to multiply it by my frequency, which is 11, which is in cell C2. And you definitely want to use cell references for this. Then once you have that first one built, you just drag it down the whole column. And then you can pull this over and find the sum for that. So there's the male sum right there, right? Okay, so now you want to take that male sum and you want to divide it by the male frequency, which was 130. There's your variance right there, right? That's what we just found. So male variance. Okay, then the male standard deviation would be the square root of that. Done. Now, it's interesting to note that I only divided by 100, up here. I only divide by 130 right there because it's assumed that it's a population in the problem. Let me go back real quick. Where was it? So the problem says that it's a male and female population. See that? All right, so since it's population, you actually divide by 130. If it was a sample, you would have divided by 129 because it's n minus 1 for the denominator if it's a sample variance. All right, so there's the male variance and there's the male standard deviation. We're done with that. Females is the same way. So it's the same thing. You would take parentheses equals midpoint minus the female mean, which is 44.5, cell D15 in my case. I press F4 to give it dollar signs, close the parentheses, square it, and multiply it by the female frequency now, which is D2. Then I drag it down. Then I bring this sum over to the right. So there's the sum for the females for that column. It's the deviation squared times the frequencies. So the female variance is equal to that number 43570 divided by 120. And again, if it was a sample, you would do 119. But since it's a population, you do the full 120. That has to do with the formulas for variance and standard deviation changing. All right, so now for female standard deviation, you just take the square root of that number. Now, that is long and involved and ugly, I have to say, to get these numbers. Oh, and if you want to believe me that they're true, I'll continue through all this. Yep, see 430, just like I got, 20.74, just like I got, and so on. Now, this is much, 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 much harder to do this way. Oh, and by the way, the variance was asked for as well as the standard deviation. Done. The calculator is much simpler, so let me do that real quick. You press Stat, you press Edit, you clear out your old, go up and press Clear, Enter, go over and up and press Clear, Enter. You type in your midpoints, 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, and so on. And then you do, I'll do the men just so you can see it, 11, 10. Okay, so there are the men. I'm just going to show you men, and then to do women, you just go back and do it again, but change the women's numbers. Then you press Stat, go to Calculate, pick number 1. Your list is in L1, so you press second 1, there's your list. And your frequency list, so your midpoints are L1, and your frequencies were second L2. Press Enter, down to Calculate. There's 43.8, that's the mean up top. There's sigma x, 20.74, and that's the one you'd use because this was a population. Now, if you want to do women, press Stat, Edit, go to the right to L3 and type them in. One sec. There they are. They're typed in. Press Stat, go to Calculate, one variable Stat. L1 is still good because that's the midpoints, but say second 3 for L3, press Enter. And there's the mean, and then there's the sigma. The calculator doesn't give you sigma squared, but all you have to do is type it, 19.05, and square it yourself with the x squared button, like that.